Order, order. We begin with clause 66, stamp part. The question is that clause 66, stamp part of the bill. Minister.
Mr Turner, I think it might be of assistance to the committee today if, on occasion where, in essence, my contribution to the debate would, where there's not great controversy about a particular clause and where, frankly, all I'm doing is effectively reminding people of what is in the clause and what is in the explanatory memorandum. On occasion, I will move that the clause stand part formally. We are now starting part 5 of the bill, which relates to GDPR. And to be honest, this clause is completely and utterly self-explanatory, so I beg to move formally.
Mr Ben Spencer. Dr Ben Spencer, I apologise.
No worries. Thank you, Mr Turner. It's a pleasure to serve again under your chairmanship in this bill committee. I speak to the introduction of this part in GDPR. I know there's some amendments which we'll speak to later as we go through the clauses, but this part makes sensible and long overdue clarifications with regards to GDPR and the interaction with data protection, particularly with regards to some updates with use of secondary data for scientific research, which I suspect we'll come to in the next clause.
The question is that clause 66, stamp part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Government Amendment 13 to clause 67. Call the Minister to move Government Amendment 13.
Mr Turner, I beg to move the amendment number 13 in my name. As you know, the UK has a proud tradition of innovative research. Our researchers are at the forefront in fields from quantum computing to medicine, for example, leading on pioneering vaccine development during the COVID-19 pandemic. And scientific research can bring life-changing benefits to our society and economy. Given this importance, the UK Data Protection Framework contains certain accommodations for processing personal data for research purposes while maintaining key safeguards. The clause, as proposed by their lordships, would require an upfront public interest test for processing to be considered as scientific research and eligible for these accommodations. We disagree with that. We agree with wanting to avoid misuse of the term scientific research, but as the Royal Society have said very clearly, the reasonableness test that is now in the bill provides adequate protection against this. The new test, provided by the Lords, would also be at odds with the internationally recognised Frascati definition, which does not mention an upfront public interest test. Such a test would be a new burden on many researchers, and the Royal Society are concerned that this could have a very negative effect on the conduct of research. The Government agrees and is especially concerned about the impact on basic and curiosity-driven research. Public benefits from such research may not be known at the time, and yet with hindsight may be overwhelming. Many of the great discoveries in scientific history, from penicillin to the electron, originated from research that had no anticipated public interest benefit, and no one could know how valuable they would be to us now. Even the mRNA-based vaccines that saved millions of lives during the COVID-19 pandemic drew on curiosity-driven research that for years had had no practical applications. This is research that we should be supporting, not stifling. An upfront public interest test could have a chilling effect on it, and this is not in the long-term public interest. Our amendment would therefore remove the public interest test that was inserted by their lordships.
Government Amendment 13 proposed to clause 67 as on the amendment paper. The question is that the amendment be made. Dr Ben Spencer.
Thank you. I listened very carefully to the Minister's remarks with regards to the government's position on the public interest test, and of course this was debated quite extensively in the other place. I have a great deal of sympathy with what their lordships were trying to achieve in terms of part of this amendment. What we're talking about is secondary use of data for scientific research. And the public interest test is used, as I understand it, in other types of scientific research tests, for example, with regards to public health data. So it's not something that's completely alien to the context, the concept of trying to define scientific research. But I do concede that there is an issue with regards to how one can define scientific research, in a sense. I think what people are nervous about, particularly some of the conversations that I've had around this definition, this new definition of scientific research for use for secondary data processing, to be hijacked by AI data companies and being a way of getting around some of the challenges which I know we're going to come on later in the bill with regards to use of big data sets by AI that they don't necessarily have licensing arrangements for. I'd be grateful if the Minister could explain his thoughts and considerations on removing this public interest test, how that would interact with regards to some of those concerns regarding AI and data use. I think the other concern about it is, at least from a very personal perspective, my sort of context of scientific research has an altruistic component to it, and at least the scientific research that I was involved in, the whole point about it is that it's information which is shared freely. Now, clearly, there's challenges of doing that, particularly when it comes to, or there's considerations one needs to focus on when it comes to research which is being done for commercial benefits. And I know part of the debate in the other place was very much around this commercial research versus non-commercial research. I think it's important that scientific research can be commercial. In fact, scientific research must be commercial. But I do think that there is a sentiment which I do appreciate that the Lordships were putting forwards as part of this test. And I'd be grateful if the Minister, when he winds up this clause, can explain, A, in terms of the points regarding some of the concerns around AI companies, but secondly, how we can capture what is the essence of scientific research, so that, when people are doing this secondary data analysis, it's being done properly. I mean, a lot of this is people marking their own homework when it comes to this data analysis, when it comes to the audit component. Some of this stuff isn't going through human rights committees and being scrutinised in that sense. So what assurances can you give me that this will operate properly and that the research which is scientific is legitimately scientific once these clauses come to pass?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Well, first of all, I'd say that he's right that there are other areas where there's a public interest test, but it's actually very narrow in other areas. So the public interest test is currently only applied to research using special category data under Schedule 1 of the Data Protection Act 2018 and public health data. So it's quite specific, which is why we're nervous about extending it across the whole of data protection. It is appropriate, we think, to have that extra protection for those particularly sensitive areas, but we think it would be disproportionate to make all researchers meet this standard, regardless of what type of data they're using. He raises the point about AI companies, which was a matter that was raised, obviously, in the Lords. It's worth reminding the committee that the clause actually narrows rather than expands the definition of scientific research. As the provisions of the bill make clear, web scrapers seeking to reuse personal data for purposes such as training AI models must have a lawful basis. Before even considering the meaning of scientific research, a web scraper would need to pass the balancing test in order to use the legitimate interest ground. In the ICO's outcomes report published last year, they emphasised that web scraping for generative AI training is a high-risk, invisible processing activity where insufficient transparency measures contribute to people being unable to exercise their rights. Generative AI developers are likely to struggle to pass the balancing test. In other words, AI companies should not be doing precisely what he's concerned that they would. Yes?
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you. Just on that point, and I thank him for giving way. He said that the changes in this clause narrow the scientific test. I'm not. That certainly wasn't my understanding. I'd be grateful if you could clarify that further, because currently under scientific research, there's only 3 criteria that can be used under GDPR. One is for statistical purposes, one is for archiving, and one is for genealogical type sort of purposes. This clause expands it quite substantively when it comes to secondary data use under GDPR.
Minister.
Well, actually, if an area of research does not currently count as scientific research, it will not count as scientific research under the bill either. Researchers will benefit from having a clearer definition in legislation that reflects the language buried in the recitals and the current ICO guidance. Improving clarity, we believe, will reduce uncertainty and the risk of misinterpretations and the misapplication of the law. The government will, of course, monitor the reform's impact and how researchers navigate the data protection framework, and we think that this will help us better understand if further changes are required. But the fundamental point that we have here is that their lordships inserted a public interest line, which we're seeking to take out. They inserted it on the because they believed that this would mean that no research will be undertaken, or no use of GDPR data will be used in a way that was not leading to eventual good outcomes. But the truth is that when you start a piece of research based on your curiosity, you might have no idea what the final outcome of your research might be, and that is a really important part of how most researchers do their work, in whether in a commercial or a non-commercial setting. And that's why the Royal Society have been quite unambiguous in stating that they think that this will have a profound chilling effect if we retain their lordship's public interest clause on research in the UK, and that's why I beg to move that our amendment be supported.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you. I think it turns on how you define public interest. I mean, me being I appreciate the concerns around this particular clause. Me being a scientific purist could argue that even blue skies research could be justified as being in the public research, providing we all understand and we benefit from the fruits of that knowledge when it's shared. But notwithstanding this point, I do want to go back to again the comment that the Minister made. Certainly my understanding of this clause and the whole point of this is to expand the definition of scientific research from the very narrow criteria which are currently under GDPR, as opposed to something. So there will be research that is currently not scientific research permitted that will be permitted as a consequence of these clauses that we're debating today.
I'll try one more time and see whether I can persuade him this time, but I'm afraid I'm going to be repeating myself. The government is not expanding the meaning of scientific research. The Bill's definition is completely in line with present ICO guidance, which states that commercial organisations can also carry out scientific research. And scientific research conducted by commercial organisations can have a life-changing impact, as many have referred to. But the definition does not cover any commercial activity. It only includes activities that could reasonably be viewed as scientific research.
Government Amendment 13 proposed to clause 67. The question is that the amendment be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 67 as amended, stand part. The question is that clause 67 as amended stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 67 as amended stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 68 stand part. The question is that clause 68 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 68 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 69 stand part. The question is that clause 69 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 69 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to Amendment 49 proposed to clause 70, with which it will be convenient also to consider Amendment 53 and 50. Call Victoria Collins to move Amendment 49.
Thank you, Mr Turner. Can I ask a process question? To formally move the amendment, what do I need to do? Just say formally?
Just move it forward.
So I move it formally?
Yeah, done.
And when can I make my speech afterwards?
Yes, now.
Oh. Thank you, Mr Turner. Clause 70 of the Data Bill introduces recognised legitimate interest as a new basis for processing personal data. While the Liberal Democrats recognise the potential of the benefits of data, we have serious concerns that Clause 70, as it stands, grants excessive and unchecked power to the Secretary of State, risking the erosion of fundamental rights. Our key message is trust and innovation go hand in hand. For us to advance and share the benefits of innovation, we must foster trust. So in the name of constructive opposition, I'll talk about the several amendments that we've tabled, so 49, 50, 53, new clause 5 and new clause 22 together, which was also brought forward by colleagues in the other place. These amendments are crucial to introduce vital safeguards, ensure proper parliamentary oversight and demand greater transparency. They directly respond to concerns raised during this bill's second reading. Moreover, they echo the concerns of numerous civil society organisations, including... Oh.
You can only speak to 49, 53 and 50 at this point. I think you're now speaking to 49.
I would propose I move them and then I would summate my points at the end if possible.
You have to move amendment 49, 53, 49. And it's a separate discussion after.
Sorry?
Be a separate discussion on the other amendments.
In the interest of everyone's time, I'd rather discuss them all together. But I can't. Okay, fine.
It's 49, 53, 50. You can't speak to all of them at once because they're all in the groups.
Okay, I will talk to 49, 50 and 53. Yeah, fine. Amendments 49 and 50 alongside 53 seek to remove the core of clause 70 that allows the direct establishment of recognised legitimate interest. Clause 70 risks bypassing essential parliamentary scrutiny, a point underscored by the Delegated Powers and Regulatory Reform Committee and the Constitution Committee, who expressed concerns about the lack of parliamentary oversight. These amendments are essential to ensure the data bill fosters innovation responsibly without sacrificing fundamental data protection. If we're to improve adoption and inclusion of growing technology and its benefits, we put forward these proposals for the government to look over. And I also welcome any proposals at report stage to improve this scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Turner. The new lawful ground of recognised legitimate interests in Clause 70 and Schedule 4 have been designed to give organisations greater confidence when processing personal data for important public interest objectives, such as preventing crime, safeguarding vulnerable individuals and protecting national security. It also ensures that non-public bodies can share information with public authorities where necessary and proportionate to do so without having to conduct a complex balancing test in situations where timely action is essential. Amendment 49 would remove this provision, making it harder for organisations to share data confidently and swiftly for these public interest purposes. I recognise the Honourable Lady might be concerned that the removal of the need to do a detailed legitimate interest balancing test in this narrow set of circumstances could reduce protections, but strong safeguards do remain in place, as was recognised in the House of Lords, which didn't carry such an amendment. Any processing must still be necessary and proportionate and comply with data protective principles under the UK GDPR to ensure that individuals' rights continue to be protected. Amendment 50 would remove the Secretary of State's ability to amend the list of recognised legitimate interests using regulations and to delete the list itself from Schedule 4 of the bill. The ability, we believe, for the Secretary of State to amend the list is a necessary safeguard to future-proof the framework. This power is not unrestricted. It is subject to strict safeguards, including parliamentary approval via the affirmative resolution procedure and the requirements that any additions must serve public interest objectives under Article 23(1) of the UK GDPR. Removing this power would make it more difficult to adapt the framework over time. I've also considered Amendment 53, which would prevent health data being processed under the new lawful ground, and I would argue conflicts with Amendment 49. Health data would only be processed under this new ground insofar as that was necessary for one of the specified recognised legitimate interests in Schedule 4 of the bill. Any processing of health data would also have to meet one of the relevant criteria for processing specific category data in Article 9 of the UK GDPR and Schedule 1 to the Data Protection Act 2018. On that basis, I hope the Honourable Lady will feel able to withdraw her amendments.
Seek to press the amendment, or do you want to withdraw?
I have to withdraw.
You have to withdraw. Is everyone content for the amendment to be withdrawn?
Aye.
Amendment by leave withdrawn. Steph Quarren, do you want to press 53?
I will just briefly, thank you. His comments, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship again, Mr Turner. I very much support the words of my colleague. I'm concerned not by the unchecked power of the Secretary of State under this regulation. We have, of course, precedents to go with under GDPR, but it is the specific and extremely high-grade personal data of personal health data that still remains a concern for me. So on that basis, I would formally put Amendment 53.
You want a division on Amendment 53?
And now I'm happy to withdraw it.
Withdrawing it.
I would quite like, sorry, if possible, quite nice to hear from the Secretary of State before I formally withdraw it.
It was debated with the other amendment. The Minister's spoken because it was debated with the other amendment.
With Amendment 49?
It was with 49.
Okay, fine.
So am I moving this?
So that's fine. Yeah, so we're on 70 stamp part.
Right. We now come to clause 70 stamp part, with which it will be convenient to also consider new clause 5, new clause 22 and schedule 4. The question is that clause 70 stamp part of the bill.
I beg to move that clause 70 and I thought we were doing schedule 4, Mr.
Yeah, schedule 4 is being debated.
It's been debated with it.
So you can discuss it.
You can discuss schedule 4 now if you so wish, Minister.
Fine. Clause 70 and Schedule 4 introduce a new lawful ground for processing personal data under Article 6 of UK GDPR, allowing organisations to process data for recognised legitimate interests without conducting a balancing test. This aims to provide legal certainty and facilitate faster data sharing for key public interest purposes like crime prevention and safeguarding. I beg to move that they stand part of the bill.
Does anybody want to speak on any of the clauses? Clause 5 and new clauses 5 and 22. Clause 70 and schedule 4. Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr Turner. New clause 5 sets out that any future changes to data safeguards, including those related to recognised legitimate interests, automated decision-making and special category data, must be subject to greater scrutiny in Parliament. It is essential that significant changes to our data protection go through that democratic process. New clause 22 requires the Secretary of State to publish a statement explaining the purpose, scope and timeline of any additional variations to recognise legitimate interests, supporting again greater transparency and accountability. These amendments are there to help improve that public trust around data. If we're to improve adoption and inclusion of growing technology and its benefits, these clauses are proposals for the government to look at, to think about how we can ensure we bring people along with us. It will also help to maintain that trust and ensure that we have those safeguards in line with the recognised legitimate interests. So if we are to establish clause 70, we again call on the government to truly ensure that robust checks and imbalances are in place. Thank you.
Just on new clause 5, if I might, Mr Turner, this seeks to strengthen parliamentary oversight of regulations that could amend the recognised legitimate interest list on the provisions on automated decision-making and special category data, which we will debate in detail later. These regulation-making powers are already subject to appropriate safeguards, we believe, and have been designed with retaining our EU adequacy decisions in mind. That is at the forefront of our mind. We'll return to the topic of EU adequacy in more detail when we reach Amendment New Clause 2, but it's important to respect the European Commission's processes and their discretion in how their adequacy assessment is undertaken. In relation to Amendment New Clause 22, this would require the Secretary of State to publish a statement explaining the purpose of any changes to the recognised legitimate interest list, to whom they would apply and for how long. I think I explained earlier, in relation to the previous amendment, any draft regulations laid before Parliament made under these provisions will be accompanied by an explanatory memorandum which would lay out precisely the things that the Honourable Lady is seeking. On that basis, I hope the Honourable Lady will feel able to withdraw her 2 amendments.
Withdraw. it's not going to be decided at this point in any event. The question is that clause 70 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
On the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 4, which we have just debated. The question is that Schedule 4 be the fourth schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 71 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 5. The question is that clause 71 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 71 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 5, which we have just debated. The question is that Schedule 5 be the fifth schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 72 stand part. The question is that clause 72 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 72 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 73 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clause 74 stand part. The question is that clause 73 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 73 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 74 stand part, which we've just debated. The question is that clause 74 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 75 stand part. The question is that clause 75 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 75 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 76 stand part. The question is that clause 76 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 76 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 77 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clauses.
I'd like to speak to clause 77.
Victoria Collins.
Well, I haven't moved this stand
Sorry,
part.
sorry.
Formally.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr Turner. Clause 77 of the Data Bill strongly risks bypassing individual data rights by watering down transparency to process personal data for use of reasons such as research, archiving, public interest or statistical purposes. While we welcome efforts to modernise data law, this modernisation should not come at the cost of transparency, a cornerstone of public trust. Clause 77 risks seriously watering down those rights about how data is collected and processed. Organisations like Justice, the British Medical Association and National Data Guardian share our concerns that this clause erodes transparency regarding the use of patient information. The National Data Guardian has specifically warned that weakening transparency obligations could negatively impact people's trust in our health and social care data as used for research, potentially impairing important data initiatives. These concerns are also shared by the British Medical Association. While we still face a crisis in the provision of health and social care, I strongly welcome all possibilities to unlock innovation for healthcare benefits, as already discussed today. For my constituent Catherine in Harpenden, who is diagnosed with ovarian cancer, a cancer often overlooked in women. For Andy and Sarah in Redbourne, who lost their daughter at a painfully young age to a brain tumour. For the families and those across Harpenden and Berkhamsted waiting diagnosis and treatment. It is also for them, and to ensure that we unlock those benefits by ensuring more data is used, that I caution against clause 77. Introducing exemptions from providing information to data subjects where it seems disproportionate effort. However, it's hard to see how this can ensure or improve transparency. And that failure to be transparent risks that loss of public trust, a message I will repeat again and again. So we urge ministers to listen to those concerns and remove the clause 77 that genuinely fosters and to ensure that there's genuine public trust and crucial data protection standards, as already discussed today.
Well, Mr Turner, I'm afraid I don't accept the characterisation that the lady has put on this clause. There is currently an exemption from notifying data subjects if it would constitute a disproportionate effort to do so or prove impossible. Obviously, there are cases where it is impossible to notify somebody. This exemption can only be used at the moment when data was not collected directly from the data subject. This clause, 77, will create a new exemption for when data was collected directly from the data subject. It will be limited to only processing for research purposes and only when there is a change of purpose. We believe that this will help longitudinal studies that originally obtained data from data subjects but would struggle to notify them about a change in purpose of the study, e.g., for instance, due to having lost contact over years or due to a deterioration in the data subject's condition. I therefore believe that this clause is actually essential to our research facilities in the UK and would urge members to support clause 77 standing part of the bill.
The question is that clause 77 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 78 and 79 stand part, which we've just debated. With the leave of the committee, I'll take the decision on these clauses together. The question is that clause 78 and 79 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Amendment 51 proposed to clause 80, with which it will be convenient to also consider new clause 23. I call Victoria Collins to move Amendment 51.
I formally move Amendment 51.
Amendment 51 proposed to clause 80 as on the amendment paper.
So you're not speaking good?
Yes, I will. Amendment 51 directly addresses the ambiguity around meaningful human involvement. This is around automated decision making. The Clause 80 of the Data Bill raises significant concerns around the future of automated decision making, and while the Liberal Democrats recognise the potential of data to drive innovation, we must remember that behind those automated decisions are people's lives. Amendment 151 directly addresses this ambiguity and seeks to ensure that any human review is performed by a person with the necessary competence, training, authority to alter the decision and analytical understanding of their data, helping to clarify that crucial definition of meaningful. Thank you.
Amendment 51 proposed to clause 80 as amended, as on the amendment paper. The question is that the amendment be made. Minister.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady because this was a key issue in previous versions of the bill, the issue of automated decision-making and precisely the definition of meaningful human involvement. And she will know that we've changed this version from the previous version. Our reforms make clear that decisions which are based solely on automated processing are ones that lack meaningful human involvement. This terminology that we've introduced in this version of the bill goes beyond the current UK GDPR and Data Protection Act wording to prevent cursory human involvement being used to effectively rubber stamp decisions that have been made by automated decision processes. The point at which human involvement becomes meaningful is context-specific, of course, which is why we have not sought to be prescriptive on the face of the bill. The Information Commissioner's Office already sets out in its guidance its interpretation that meaningful human involvement must be active. Someone, a human being, must review the decision and have the discretion to alter it before the decision is applied. The government's introduction of the term meaningful to primary legislation does not change this definition, and we are supportive of the ICO's guidance in this space. As such, the government agrees on the importance of the ICO continuing to provide its views on interpretation of terms used in the legislation. Our reforms do not remove the ICO's ability to do this, or to advise Parliament or the government if it considers that the law needs clarification. Basically, I broadly speaking agree with the Honourable Lady, but which is why I don't think that her amendment is necessary.
Victoria Collins.
I thank the Minister for his points on this. I think that what's important to highlight, and I'm happy to withdraw this amendment, but what's important to highlight is it's that person needs to have the necessary competence, training and authority around those decisions, so that meaningful human involvement is very clear.
Before we give the permission to withdraw the amendment, do you want to speak to new clause 23, which is grouped at this point?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you, Mr Turner. Similarly, new clause 23 mandates that the Secretary of State, in conjunction with the Information Commissioner, must produce a clear definition of meaningful human involvement within 6 months, or justify why such a definition is not required. Again, this is to ensure that that term of meaningful human involvement is not just a hollow gesture. I do welcome the remarks of the Minister about clarifying that, but it is really crucial, if we're going to get this automated decision making right, that that is defined and that is clear for everyone involved.
I briefly add, Mr Turner, that the Information Commissioner already provides guidance in this sphere. We don't want to prevent the Information Commissioner providing guidance in that sphere in the future. She's absolutely right. It has to be a meaningful human involvement, and we think that we've got the balance right in the bill.
Is everyone content for the amendment to be withdrawn?
Aye.
Amendment by leave withdrawn. We now come to clause 80, standard part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 6 and new clause 1. 4, 7, 24 and 26. The question is that clause 8 stand part of the bill. Minister.
Mr Turner, I think since we've got several amendments here, it might be worth me making some comments. Clause 80 strikes, we believe, the right balance between helping organisations make the most of emerging technologies that drive up economic growth and productivity, whilst maintaining public confidence in the process. Organisations will be able to make decisions having significant effects for individuals based solely on automated processes in wider circumstances than presently, but they must implement stringent safeguards. These safeguards include individuals' rights to challenge and obtain human intervention if they're not satisfied with the decision. Where law enforcement agencies process personal data for a law enforcement purpose, they will be able to apply an exemption to the safeguards in very limited circumstances, such as to safeguard national security. Where this happens, a human must reconsider that decision as soon as reasonably practicable after it is taken, and that review must be meaningful. For the intelligence services, where entirely automated decision-making is used, we are making clarifications to provide greater confidence to controllers and the public. Schedule 6 of the bill contains minor and consequential amendments to the UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act. These amendments repeal and replace references to the current rules on automated decision-making with the reformed rules in Clause 80 of the bill to provide legal clarity. As relates to new Clause 1, new Clause 4 and new Clause 24, the Government's Algorithmic Transparency Recording Standard, or ATRS, enables public authorities to publish information on how and why they are using algorithmic tools. This includes a description of the human role in the wider operational process of which the tool is part. There are now more than 50 ATRS records published in the repository, and more will follow shortly. Where these amendments seek to ensure that such tools are evaluated, the Blueprint for Modern Digital Government, laid in Parliament in January, makes clear that part of its role will be to offer specialist assurance support, including a service to rigorously test models and products before release. I hope this provides reassurance to the Honourable Lady. Turning to Amendments New Clause 7 and 26, I will address these together as they intend to achieve the same effect. I would like again to reassure, I'm trying to offer a lot of reassurance to the Honourable Lady and the Honourable Gentleman, that the data protection framework has stringent safeguards in place for solely automated decision-making. The UK GDPR transparency obligations already require organisations to notify individuals about the existence of solely automated decision-making and provide meaningful information about the logic involved. Under our reforms, after a decision has been made, organisations must also provide data subjects with information about these decisions. These information requirements enable individuals to exercise the safeguards I referred to earlier. These are in addition to the wider transparency requirements of the framework. These safeguards in the reformed Article 22 are unnecessary for partly automated decision-making, since these decisions already include meaningful human involvement by definition. When it comes to high-risk decisions, there are already additional requirements for processing which can result in a high risk to the rights and freedoms of individuals, including automated decision-making. Controllers must carry out an impact assessment for such processing activities and consult with the ICO where such an assessment indicates a high risk to individuals in the absence of effective measures. This process ensures that potential risks are identified and addressed. I hope, therefore, that the Honourable Lady and the Honourable Gentleman feel that they can withdraw their amendments.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you. These are a really interesting set of clauses in this bill, and particularly the debates that we're having here and there's also in the other place regarding automated decision making. And of course, automated decision making is here. It's everywhere. It's every part of our life. I was just looking at my Spotify app on my phone, which has suggested on my day list I should start off by listening to Frontline Assembly, which is an industrial metal band, which is probably because it's one of those, you know, going into data bill committee on a Tuesday morning, I need something to sort of get me started.
Don't get me started.
Well, we can. Oh, the temptation. So the point about the automated decision making is when it's decisions made about people without them, and when it has substantial state consequences, particularly when it's made for the public sector. But of course, automated decision making takes place all the time, day in, day out. We saw automated decision making in a huge scale during the COVID pandemic when people had to sign up to universal credit, checking in terms of basic characteristics, people's assets for availability of universal credit. That's a decision which had quite substantial impact on people, but actually the data points which were being used were quite simple and straightforward. No concern was particularly raised about the automated decision making, as far as I can understand, in that context, apart from on a few examples where people's circumstances are remarkably unique. It's the purpose of this bill is with the scale, and particularly when it comes to AI and more sophisticated decision making going forwards. We think that these new clauses seek to place an onerous and unnecessary obligations on government bodies and public authorities. They extend to, amongst other things, to giving notice on public register by public bodies, apparently for each and every function they perform where automated decision making is used, new clause 1, obliging the Secretary of State to put in place and maintain a public register of all semi-automated or fully automated decision-making tools used by public authorities in relation to individuals, with public bodies being precluded from using such tools in advance of their registration, new clause 4, and providing service users with a range of powers to request information from data controllers in relation to the workings of wholly or partly automated decisions in relation to purportedly high-risk decisions, new clause 7. I have to say, with regards to new clause 7 and new clause 26, I'm quite amazed at the suggested provisions which are being put forward in these new clauses by the members on this side, which seem to give quite extensive discretionary powers to the Secretary of State to define high-risk decisions and regulate them accordingly. So I was surprised to see them as part of that, the scope of handing over power to the Secretary of State as part of those new clauses. These clauses in general are especially burdensome and unnecessary given the widespread existing use of automated decision-making as from DWP initial assessments, as I was alluding to earlier. The matter of automated decision-making was the subject of significant debate, and the bill as drafted includes more safeguard measures in relation to automated decision-making at Section 80, with its new Article 22C to GDPR safeguards for automated decision-making, including through the requirement on data controllers to provide information to data subjects about significant decisions being taken through solely automated processing, the right to contest those decisions, and the right to seek human intervention at the request of the data subject. Our view is that the existing provisions of Clause 80 provide a proportionate approach to the protections of individual rights in the context of potential speed and, importantly, efficiency gains, which I don't think we've spoken about, in fact, at all, I don't think, during this debate, that these tools and decision-makings will help. Actually, no, I apologies. I mentioned it myself earlier with regards to the use of universal credit with regards to response for COVID. We rely, for the basic functions of government and public authorities, on widespread automated decision-making.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I'd like to reiterate that I'd like to think that Liberal Democrats, we're all aligned in that we're very excited about this opportunity. Automated decision-making and the use of AI is a really exciting opportunity for this country to move forward. But it is exciting, but a fundamental shift. And I feel it's our job as a constructive opposition to put forward proposals for consideration to ensure that there is proper scrutiny and that there are ideas to make sure the public is brought with us, so that all of the things that we put forward are in that light. And that's the thing, because behind these decisions are real people's lives. For me, I have a family in Wheatonstead who are desperate for a social home to fit their family life. We've got someone, let's call him John from Tring, who said he's been systematically failed since high school. He's had a universal credit claim closed for not uploading the correct documents, and feels that a lack of human support to understand why he wasn't able to do it would have meant that the barriers for him to be able to get the help he needed. We've had another case where HMRC constituents being taxed on a pension income he wasn't actually receiving. And actually it was only after hours of support from our team and also from the department that actually we were able to turn that around. But the point is that it would be how difficult it would be for people to fix any errors from resulted automated decision making if there's not enough transparency. So we've got to get that balance right. And there is uncertainty and potential for watering down protections through the Secretary of State's power to define crucial terms like meaningful human involvement and similarly significant effect. And Clause 80 seeks to update those safeguards around automated decision-making. However, organisations like Justice and the Open Rights Group have pointed out there's real worry that it weakens these vital safeguards by broadening the scope for purely automated decisions. Furthermore, the considerable powers granted to the Secretary of State through secondary legislation to amend or set aside these safeguards creates a concerning lack of parliamentary oversight. So it's with these reservations in mind, and as I said, that constructive opposition that we've put forward these clauses, and I'll just quickly speak to those. New Clause 1 places clear requirements on public sector organisations regarding the use of algorithmic automated decision-making. It demands public notice of their use and the provision of meaningful and personalised explanations to affect individuals about how and why a decision was made. I've already raised cases of where that would impact. I'm sure we all have cases like that in our inbox. This directly tackles the concerns about transparency and the right to explanation, a principle the Liberal Democrats firmly believe in. New Clause 4 proposes creating a publicly accessible register for AI and algorithmic tools in the public sector. New Clause 7 seeks to empower individuals by granting them the right to request comprehensive information regarding decisions based wholly or partly on automated processes that have legal or similarly significant effect on them. This aligns with the Liberal Democrat commitment to ensure accountability and redress. New Clause 24 proposes the establishment of a public register of all automated or semi-automated systems used by public authorities to make or materially influence decisions. This measure is vital. These measures help promote that transparency and enable public scrutiny, something this House is here for, something we're there for as MPs, and we know that we do that either in legislation or for our constituents on a daily basis. And with these increasingly influential technologies, it's important that these questions are brought forward. Finally, Clause 26 reinforces the right to an explanation by requiring data controllers to provide, upon request, clear explanations of high-risk AI decisions. We need to make sure that that meaningful human involvement remains central. So these amendments are not intended to stifle innovation, but rather to ensure the evolution of data use is guided by principles of fairness, transparency and accountability. We must ensure that this data is truly the new gold for everyone. The rights and protections of individuals are not devalued in the process. Indeed, it is often guidelines that promote better innovation. These amendments represent our commitment to ensuring that Clause 80 in its final form truly serves to modernise our data laws without sacrificing fundamental safeguards that protect everyone and the people behind those decisions. And I thank the Minister for his consideration.
Mr Turner, I'm not sure that I've got a great deal to add. I feel caught between the we're going too far and you're not going far enough rock, which would suggest to me that we are probably being proportionate and sensible in what we are advocating. So I would resist the amendments and support the original clause. I would also merely add that I don't have Spotify on my phone because I choose not to stream. I prefer to pay for my music. But I do note that my ministerial podcast is available on Spotify.
That's sort of out of order. It's implying that I don't pay for my music.
No, I'm not.
Order. The question is that Clause 80 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 6, which we have just debated. The question is that Schedule 6 be the sixth schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 66 stamp part, with which it will be convenient to consider new clause 81. Clause 81.
Clause 81, I think.
We now come to clause 81 stamp part, with which it will be convenient to consider new clause 61. The question is that clause 81 stamp part of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I think we're considering that clause 81 stand part of the bill and that new clause 21 be considered, which is the amendment from the Honourable Lady. Clause 81, and I should say, incidentally, I think my opponent thinks that I'm trying to calumnise him by suggesting that he doesn't pay for his music. I'm not making that suggestion at all. Clause 81 amends Article 25 of the UK GDPR to strengthen obligations for providers of information society services likely to be accessed by children, such as social media platforms and streaming services. It requires these providers to actively consider children's data protection needs when designing their services, ensuring appropriate organisational and technical measures are in place to safeguard young users. The clause sets out the higher protection matters that ISS providers must consider when designing their services, including how best to protect and support children when processing their personal data. The duty also requires these data controllers to consider the fact that children merit specific protection because they may be less aware of the risks and their rights, and the fact children's needs vary with age and development. When considering how to comply with the new duty, ISS providers will be greatly aided by the ICO's Age-Appropriate Design Code. It sets out comprehensive guidance for ISS providers on using personal data in a way which complies with the data protection principles and respects the best interests of children. The Honourable Lady has tabled her new clause 21, which in effect increases the age of consent for social media from 13 to 16. I'm happy to listen to her comments, but much of this was debated both last Friday in the Private Members' Bill debate on Friday morning, and I think that's partly what led her to table this amendment, and also in the debate in Westminster Hall a few weeks ago. So I'm happy to answer her comments, but we will be resisting her amendment.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you. I rise to speak to new clause 21. At the heart of new clause 21 is the aim to restrict access to certain social media platforms for children under the age of 16. And I'm very sympathetic to the honourable member's motivations.
Can I make an intervention?
Yeah, of course.
If he wishes.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that this is about age of data consent. So it's not about access to social media, but it's data consent. So as long as that is clear for everyone, I'll be covering that in my speech, but I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, I thank you for the clarification. I do think that there's an overlap, nevertheless, in terms of the debate that took place in the Chamber last Friday regarding the ballot bill brought forward by the member for Whitehaven and Working and Coined, the Safer Phones Bill, which all of us took part in. During that contribution, I highlighted the mounting research and evidence of harm to adolescents' mental health regarding the attraction of social media platforms. Policy in this area needs to be developed on robust data and evidence. And in that regard, we also need to seek to learn from the rollout of the Online Safety Act and the implementation of Ofcom's guidance on putting in place age assurance in relation to types of content on that basis, but we also say regards to data. I welcome reports that the government intends to commission the Chief Medical Officer to undertake a review of the harms associated in this area. It's disappointing that he didn't give a firm commitment at the dispatch box last Friday, and I wonder if in response he might take the opportunity to do so today.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Turner. I start with young people at the heart of this. It is indeed a debate we've had again and again. I think it's important we keep that going. I myself have been on a Safer Screens tour speaking to young people across Harpenden and Berkhamsted, from Ashlands and Berkhamsted and St George's and Harpenden and beyond. As an MP, I've heard from girl guides who've spoken to me about their concerns about online bullying and harmful content. As I visited local schools on my Safer Screens tour, young men have told me that social media has shown them extreme content they do not want to see, and despite their efforts to block or ban, the algorithm brings it back. Young women as well have told me about their worries about growing misogyny from content online. Together, young women and men have talked about the impact on their body image, bullying, and about the amount of time sucked up by social media, time they want to spend doing other things. Mounting evidence highlights the negative effects of exposure to an unsafe online environment for our children. Every day we hear concerns of parents, the anxieties of teachers, and crucially the voices of young people themselves, all crying out for action to ensure their safety online, calling for stronger regulation around their online experience. I realise that there's the Online Safety Act, which is moving forward, but it does not go far enough. This is a matter of profound importance for the well-being of our nation's children and young people. The digital world is now the fabric of our lives and the lives of young people. It's where they learn, connect and seek entertainment. Yet, as this digital landscape expands, so do the risks that they face. As the organisation Five Rights highlights, the enormous potential of technology will only be realised when it is designed with children and young people in mind. We have an opportunity, if not an obligation, to use this Parliament to help shape that technology now. It was therefore with disappointment that it seemed that the Safer Phones Bill was watered down. We have therefore tabled this crucial amendment to the Data Bill, a necessary step to strengthen protections for our young people in the digital age. This amendment seeks to bring UK data law in line with many of our European neighbours by raising the minimum age at which internet companies can collect, process and store a user's data without explicit parental consent to 16. This amendment is not about banning children under the age of 16 from accessing social media. It is important that the responsibility lies with the social media companies to ensure online spaces are age appropriate and manage content and features. Rather, this amendment is a targeted and proportional measure to require online services to fundamentally change how they handle children's data. This crucial change will necessitate restricting the pervasive and often harmful influence of algorithms, making these platforms inherently less addictive and ultimately fostering a more child-friendly digital environment. It's imperative that digital technology is designed with the best interests of our children and young people at heart, ensuring their rights and privacies are upheld, not as an afterthought, but safety by design and by default. Furthermore, our amendment underscores the fundamental principle that the responsibility for managing content and features must remain firmly with social media companies themselves. We are calling for the establishment of robust digital standards to ensure these platforms prioritise child safety and privacy as their default setting, not as an optional extra. However, our duty to protect children online cannot end with this amendment alone. We're also calling on the government to take further action, whether it's about explicitly recognising and treating children's social media as part of a critical public health issue, and I welcome proposals that were put forward by the government last week, introducing a cross-government safer screens task force that would look at that research into multifaceted impact of social media on children's well-being, thoroughly examining international best practices and identifying innovative solutions to the challenges we face, developing evidence-based policies that will demonstrably improve online safety for children. This is not an overnight phenomenon. Last year marked 20 years since Facebook was created, 18 years since the smartphone was launched. We're now facing mounting calls from young people, parents and teachers. It is now the time for greater action where the Online Safety Act still leaves gaps. I urge the government to recognise the urgent need for decisive action and to support our amendment to the Data Use and Access Bill. This is a pivotal opportunity to genuinely strengthen protections for young people online and cultivate a digital world where they can thrive, not merely navigate potential harms. Let us work together across party lines to ensure a safer and brighter digital future for all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. It's a pleasure to speak in this committee under your chairship. I have some sympathy with what the Honourable Lady is trying to do with her amendment. And I would invite the Minister, and I'm sure he'll address it, obviously, but that very specific point she makes, that this isn't about restricting access to social media for people between 13 and 16, but making the way social media is targeted at those age groups more restricted. I'm more minded to the line of argument that the Honourable Lady's made after visiting a school, Ride Academy, in my constituency, and hearing young people themselves and hearing their reaction to their school putting in place restrictions to access to use to phones, which obviously a school can only do during the school day. But I'd be interested to hear the Minister's response to, I think, a quite reasonable proposition about finding ways to restrict the way social media companies target children between 13 and 16, and restricting the way they collect their data, I think sounds to me like a small but very meaningful step government could take. I'd be interested in his response on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner. Well, I thought that this might stray a little bit away from the precise point that the Honourable Gentleman has just referred to into broader issues around young people's use of smartphones and social media in general, and it has. Inevitably it has. It's a very live issue, and we as a government are painfully aware of the issues, as I tried to say in the debate last Friday, and we're trying to work out what is the best way forward to get to a place where the rules that were implemented in the Online Safety Act, some of which only come into force now in spring, and some have yet to get parliamentary approval, which will probably come in April, how we make sure that those rules are bed in properly and are adhered to, probably before we take further action, simply because otherwise it's difficult to know whether the Online Safety Act has gone far enough or not. I wish the Online Safety Act had not been Online Safety Act 2023, but had been the Online Safety Act 2021 or 2019 or whatever, and then it might have been easier for us now to be in a position where we were able to assess what has happened. As honourable members know, in the debate on Friday, I referred to the feasibility study that's being done by the Department for Science, or has been commissioned by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology from Cambridge University, working with other researchers. That will finish its work in May. So I hope that we will have further information then. And if we need to provide further guidance, I mean, there is a lot of guidance out there already for parents and for teachers and for schools, but if we need to provide more informed guidance into the future, then that is certainly something that we'll look at. The question of the precise targeting by algorithms and others of young people is, at least theoretically, already met by the Online Safety Act. That's why I don't think that this is the appropriate measure for us to take forward at this time. And the issue of 13 or 16 was decided previously by Parliament after quite extensive consultation. It was decided by the previous government, obviously, and agreed by Parliament during the passage of the Data Protection Act in 2018. All of these matters do have to be kept under review, and we are doing so in an urgent way, not least because a lot of members are bringing their concerns from their constituents and their families and so on. I sometimes worry that the concentration solely on the issue of schools is to the detriment of the wider issues that we're facing, not least because, as teachers would readily admit, they only ever see children for some 20% of their time. So we need to set this in a wider context. I understand the motivation behind the new clause, but I'm still resisting it.
The question is that clause 81 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 82 stand part. The question is that clause 82 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 82 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 83 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clause 84 stand part. The question is that clause 83 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 83 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 84 stand part, which we've just debated. The question is that clause 84 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 85 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 7 to 9. The question is that clause 85 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 85 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 7, 8 and 9, which we've just debated. With leave of the committee, I'll put the single question on Schedule 7, 8 and 9. Minister to move formally.
Formally.
The question is that Schedule 7, 8 and 9 be the 7th, 8th and 9th schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 86 stamp part, with which will be convenient to also consider clause 87 stamp part. The question is that clause 86 stamp part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 86 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 87 stamp part, which we have just debated. The question is that clause 87 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 88 stamp part. The question is that clause 88 stamp part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 88 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 89 stamp part, with which it would be convenient to also consider clause 90 stamp part and new clause 8. The question is that clause 86 stamp part of the bill. Mr.
Yes, 89, I think. Yes, and I beg to move that formally, but I'm mainly to speak to new clause 8, which has been tabled by the Honourable Lady, which would require the Information Commissioner to review and publish an annual report on data sharing by law enforcement and the intelligence services. Any processing of personal data by law enforcement and the intelligence services must always, by definition, be lawful, which inherently includes the requirement that the processing be necessary and proportionate. The Information Commissioner has existing obligations to provide an annual report to Parliament under the DPA 2018 and may also produce additional reports should they see fit. There are existing powers of investigation, monitoring and enforcement that the Information Commissioner can exercise as appropriate to oversee law enforcement agencies and the intelligence services, and given the current state of oversight, system of oversight, and the fact that he's already required to provide reports and, on an annual basis, I hope the Honourable Lady will withdraw her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I'm sure members will be pleased to have a very short intervention. Clause 89 permits joint processing of personal data between law enforcement and intelligence services for the crucial purpose of safeguarding national security. While, as Liberal Democrats, recognise the necessity of such collaboration in specific circumstances, the inherently sensitive nature of the data demands the highest level of protection and scrutiny. So new Clause 88 seeks to ensure that ministerial changes to data safeguards to this joint processing cannot be enacted without proper scrutiny from Parliament. We would also welcome proposals from the government report stage to uphold and ensure that parliamentary scrutiny.
Minister. The question is that clause 89 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 90 stamp part, which we've just debated. The question is that clause 90 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 91 stamp part. The question is that clause 91 stamp part of the bill. Minister?
Formally.
The question is that clause 91 stamp part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 92 stamp part, with which it will be convenient to also consider new clause 27 and clause 93 stamp part. The question is that clause 92 stamp part of the bill. Minister.
I beg to move that clauses 92 and 93 stand part of the bill, but primarily to speak to amendment new clause 27. The government is committed to the independence of the regulator, which will continue to be accountable to Parliament. This bill does not introduce a statement of strategic priorities, as I think the Honourable Lady seems to suggest, nor does the Secretary of State issue discretionary guidance to the regulator. Neither this bill nor existing legislation provides for the Secretary of State to amend or reject a code of practice. I therefore do not see that this amendment is necessary.
Shadow Minister, Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you. It was just regarding a specific point in terms of the text of the new clause 27. We don't support the sort of curtailment of powers, particularly in the context. I'm sure the Secretary of State will consult the matter of course in terms of in the carrying out his duties, whatever they are. But to have a specific requirement for consultation to the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee, I think is, notwithstanding the prowess and stature of said committee, it seems to me to be quite an odd one.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr Turner. For us, it's again in the spirit of ensuring that there is proper scrutiny in place, and so we're proposing ideas to ensure that that is put forward. But I welcome the comments from the Minister and happy to withdraw that clause.
The question is that clause 92 stands part of the bill. As many as are on that being considered. Now comes to the question of clause 93 stands part. We just debated the question is that clause 93 stands part of the bill. As many as are on that being considered. The contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to clause 94 stand part. The question is that clause 94 stands part of the bill. The question is that clause 94 stands part of the bill. As many as are on that being say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Government Amendment 22 to clause 95, which is the committee to take clause 95 stand part and clauses 135 to 139 stand part and new clauses 17 to 20. Call the Minister to move Amendment 22.
Thank you, Mr Turner. Clause 95.1. I beg to move Government Amendment 22. Clause 95.1 relates to artificial intelligence and copyright and the related reporting requirement on the Information Commissioner. I will set out our fuller reasoning on copyright and AI in a moment, but for this amendment I merely state that we believe it is not the right time to act as part of this bill and to place an additional reporting obligation on the Information Commissioner. With that in mind, Government Amendment 22 would remove clause 95.1, which was added into the bill at Lord's report stage. In relation to clause 95 stand part, I'm moving to clause 95.2. This requires the Information Commissioner to publish key performance indicators. This government takes the performance and accountability of UK regulators seriously. Regulators undertake important functions right across our economy and society, and the ICO is no exception. It is therefore important that Parliament and other stakeholders have the right means to hold them to account. Publishing metrics such as this is best practice and will be a transparent way of providing measurable analysis of the ICO's performance year on year. This forms part of a package of additional reporting requirements alongside those set out in Clause 91 and the report on regulatory action in Clause 102, which I will discuss later. Together, they will give greater understanding and transparency over priorities, performance and enforcement activities. In relation, because we're taking this in the same section, Mr Turner, though they are clauses that come quite a bit later and we will vote on them later. Clauses 135 to 139, I'm urging that they do not stand part of the bill. These clauses set out further requirements on copyright and AI. They require regulations to be made relating to compliance with copyright law by web crawlers and general-purpose AI models, transparency about the use of web crawlers and the works they scrape, an enforcement requirement for the Information Commission, and a review of technical solutions in this area. The House knows well, and because I've debated it several times already, that I agree with many of the points raised in debate about these clauses and the vital importance of transparency for rights holders and in the creative industries. That is why it was one of the key principles of the consultation on copyright and AI, which we published and which closed on the 25th of February. We want to see genuine transparency on what is used in training AI, alongside rights holders' control of their works, with appropriate access to training material for AI. However, whilst I accept it is the intention behind the amendments that were introduced, i.e. the clauses 135 to 139 that were introduced in the Lords, we believe it is not the right time to act as part of this bill, which was a data bill, and we have received over 11,000 detailed and heartfelt responses to our public consultation on AI and copyright. Many of them set out specific views on transparency and on technical standards and on a whole range of the questions that we asked in that consultation. We are taking care to read each one of them, And while we do think action needs to be taken on transparency and on web crawlers, as well as on other issues relating to AI and copyright, it is only right that we carefully consider all of the viewpoints and evidence before acting. We have heard loud and clear the message that stakeholders do not want us to rush to legislate on this topic, and we intend to heed that. Indeed, the Secretary of State met yesterday with representatives from the creative industries and repeated that point himself. The engagement will not end with this consultation. I've already stated our intention to create working groups to move the conversation forward, including on technical solutions. Industry often comes up with the best ideas, so I want to harness that, whether it is greater transparency about AI training or standards on web crawlers, metadata and watermarking. Whatever the solution, we want to be confident in their efficacy and, critically, in their simplicity and accessibility. We have said repeatedly that we would not move forward in this sphere unless we were confident that we were going to be able to provide greater control for rights holders over the use of their works. We will publish proposals once we have analysed the responses to the consultation. Clauses 135 to 139, which were added into the bill at Lord's report stage, should not, I therefore argue, stand part of the bill. If I now might turn to the new clauses that have been tabled in this area by the opposition. Moving to which are new clauses 17 to 20, which also relate to artificial intelligence and copyright. I'm grateful to the way in which my opposite number has advanced these suggestions. These amendments require the Secretary of State to issue a statement in relation to the application of UK copyright law to the activities of web crawlers and artificial intelligence models. This could be a copyright notice issued by the Intellectual Property Office. That's a possibility, as in one of the clauses. They also require the Secretary of State to produce 2 reports, one of which should include a plan for transparency over the use of copyright materials with AI, and the other on access to data and how to reduce market entry barriers for startups and smaller AI enterprises. Finally, they require the Secretary of State to publish a technical standard for a machine-readable digital watermark which would allow rights holders to label their content for the purposes of licensing. As the House is aware, these amendments relate to issues that are at the heart of the government's approach to AI and copyright. Indeed, the recently closed consultation sought views precisely on these issues. I would commend my colleagues on the other side of the House on the spirit of these amendments. I would ask them to withdraw them at this time, and I hope that we might be able to have further discussions on how we might move forward when it comes to report stage. While these amendments may indeed be useful steps for the government to take in solving issues on artificial intelligence and copyright, given the 11,000 responses we received to the consultation, proper analysis and policy development is likely to take longer than the proposed timeframes included in the clauses. In addition, we would not wish to preempt the consultation, which some of these proposed clauses may do. That said, I do hope I can discuss the issues raised by these amendments further with the honourable members from both of the opposition parties to discuss whether we might be able to agree on similar proposals in one form or another as we move forward. As I have said, we take these issues seriously. As I'm the Minister for the Creative Industries and I'm a Minister in the Department for Science and Innovation and Technology, I take a very special interest in this, and I agree with the spirit of what these amendments, the amendments tabled by the Honourable Member, would seek to achieve. But with that in mind, I would ask the Honourable Member to withdraw the amendments, new clause 17 to 20 at this stage.
Government Amendment 22 proposed to clause 95 as on the amendment paper. The question is that the amendment be made. Shadow Minister.
Thank you. And I thank the Minister equally for the spirit in which he's taken forward this debate, which is a very important debate, which has captured the focus of a great many people whose livelihoods are absolutely dependent on this area, making sure that we get it right, both from the creative sectors and the AI sectors, but also, the vast majority of us, dare I say, who, if not all of us, who love and benefit UK products of UK creative, industries. I'm first going to draw my remarks to clauses 135 to 139 stand parts before I go on to the new clauses, which are in my name on behalf of His Majesty's and members behind me, His Majesty's opposition. While there are problems with clauses 135 to 139. These clauses, which the government is seeking to remove, do reflect well-founded and much publicised concerns of creative industries about the manner in which AI developers conduct data mining activities to train their models and for generative activities. And I should declare an interest. I recently attended the Brit Awards with support from BPI with my wife, and so received hospitality in the past couple of weeks. I want to recognise the tremendous efforts in the other place of the Noble Baroness Lady Kidron in bringing this incredibly important issue to the forefront of the minds of lawmakers and the public. My noble friend, the leader of His Majesty's Opposition, member for North West Essex, has been clear about the importance of growing our domestic AI industry, and these technologies have the potential to improve our lives and to stimulate economic growth. But this need not and must not be at the expense of our creative industries. Music, and especially live music, as I've already said in the House, is one of my passions, and I know the Minister opposite shares my passion for our creative industries, and indeed his efforts to incorporate a thespian flourish into the debates that we have had over the past few months don't go unappreciated by some. We must ensure...
But they do by others.
He can interpret it as he wishes. We must ensure our creative industry is supported to thrive while at the same time harnessing the technological and economic benefits of growing our domestic AI capability. These amendments in this area from the old place, as well clauses of a place, touch broadly on a number of important principles which were supported, including the application of copyright law to data mining and AI generative activity, Clause 135, the need for high transparency in the way which AI models are trained and the materials used for that purpose, the importance of identifying sound technological solutions so that copyrighted content can be identified by web crawlers and AI models excluded from training and generative activity. However, these matters and their solutions are complex from a technological, legal and societal perspectives. We recognise that. We totally recognise the challenges in terms of legislating in this area. Our international counterparts are also facing the same challenges in trying to strive an effective balance between our AI industries and supporting our creative sector. It's not a zero-sum game, and clearly there's collaboration and mutual benefit for both if we get the approach right. As my honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State for DISA, has stated in the Chamber, creative industries are telling us that the government solution, as set out in its consultation, its preferred option, is not fit for purpose. And we do need to engage carefully with the feedback received from industry stakeholders in order to come up with the right solutions in that area. And it's on that basis that I turn to, I beg to move new clauses 17 to 20. As the Minister has already referred to, these clauses are recognising that putting together a specific plan in great detail how to solve this is something that needs to be done in the context of chewing through the information through the consultation that's been going on, and extensive engagement with the people who are actually going to do this stuff and the people who are going to be affected by it. So these clauses are, in effect, endpoint clauses, the world in which we want to see in the future, so that our AI and our creative sector can work together and we get all the benefits from both going forwards. It's what we want to get to, a bit less on the journey in terms of how you get there, with the exception of, in effect, the government needs to crack on and sort this out in terms of putting together that journey plan. Well, he's the Minister, that sort of comes with the job. So turning to new clause 17. This is intended to require the government to confirm the application of existing copyright law to creative content mined by AI web crawlers and models in the same way it would apply to other offline content. It's our position that there's no ambiguity about the application of copyright law in this context. However, the government has consistently suggested in its consultation copyright and artificial intelligence and elsewhere that the legal position here is unclear and in effect created ambiguity. It's given rise to significant concern and objection from the creative sector, and it deters smaller AI enterprises and startups from developing their products. There is also a sort of counter, which is because of the mere existence of the possibility of a future opt-out, I've heard evidence that AI companies are now thinking, well, let's hang on before we buy licensed content because we might get it for free anyway if this goes going forward. So if the aim was to give confidence to the AI sector as a result of consultation, that sort of hasn't happened either. Clarity is needed for both the creative and AI industries, but not in the form of a wholesale exemption of copyright law to development and generative activity undertaken by AI models. The government should make a clarificatory statement about the existing application of copyright law in this area. This certainly is the foundation block on which sound policy aimed at supporting the creative industries to harness the economic value of their work. And for this reason, I commend and beg to move New Clause 17 to the committee. With regards to New Clause 18, this requires the government within 3 months of royal assent to lay before Parliament a plan to put forwards proportionate and effective measures to ensure transparency in the use of copyright materials in training, development and generative activities of AI models, and with emphasis on proportionate and effective measures. At high level, ensuring transparency in this area will help to ensure that information is available for rights holders to discern where and how their work has been used, and to seek payment for use of their work where appropriate. New Clause 18 seeks to address the widespread concerns of creative right holders that they do not know when their material is being used, which acts as a block to any form of enforcement of their rights or licensing going forwards. However, the approach to transparency must be proportionate. In particular, transparency obligations should not be so onerous that they stifle the market for AI startups and smaller enterprises in their infancy, when these entities should form the lifeblood of our future technological economy. One could envisage a situation where, if we get the legislation on this wrong, in effect, the recording and storing of information as it's gone through to create a model, in its extreme triviality, could become a bigger data set than the data set that's being used in the first place. Hence the focus on the importance of proportionate and effectiveness of these measures. The timings of the action to be taken by the Secretary of State of this new clause within 3 months of royal assent is intended to give the Secretary of State a proper opportunity to consider the feedback of the creative and AI industries, other stakeholders received under their recently concluded consultation copyright and AI. And I'm ambitious for the Minister and for the government. I know he sort of slightly diminished the ability to get on and try and put something together, but I've got faith in him in terms of driving.
You got 5 years to get nowhere.
In driving forwards. It's intended to give them a proper opportunity. This feedback should help formulate a plan that's both effective and workable, and for this reason I commend and beg to move New Clause 18 to the committee. New Clause 19 requires the Secretary of State within 3 months of royal assent to lay before Parliament a plan to reduce barriers to market entry for startups and smaller AI enterprises, specifically in relation to access to data to train their models. The government's now concluded consultation on copyright and artificial intelligence specifies that one of its key aims is to support wide access to high quality material to drive development of leading AI models in the UK. The AI Opportunities Action Plan, commissioned by the government, made a series of recommendations going to the need to unlock public and private data sets to enable innovation by UK startups and researchers to attract international talent and capital. While this imbalance in access to resources between established companies and startups, SMEs, is of course in the nature of markets, failing to address it in this context risks reinforcing a situation where AI development activity remains the preserve of a relatively small number of established operators, particularly those who've been able to set up now using data sets which they haven't had to go through whatever provisions are eventually put in place in terms of regulating this area. The Prime Minister indicated in his response to the action plan that DSIT would look at how to take forward this area of policy. New Clause 19 calls on the government to put its money where its mouth is, so to speak, and come up with a proper plan to turbocharge not only growth in our AI sector, but diversity and competition amongst operators of all sizes. By coming up with a plan to reduce barriers to market entry that accessibility of data presents. And of course, there is, given the increasing adoption and use of AI by digital government and the mechanisms of the state, there is a critical importance, both in terms of our national security, but also in terms of our national resilience, that we have a functioning domestic AI market that we can draw on for our use. Again, the timescale for the Secretary of State to publish his report provides an opportunity for industry and stakeholder feedback to be taken into account when developing effective plans. And for this reason, I commend New Clause 19 to the committee and beg to move it. And finally, finishing off with New Clause 20, publishing a technological standard. And I would hope that these previous 3 new clauses are relatively uncontroversial. I would particularly hope that this is the most uncontroversial of all, because this is a party amendment which was passed. It's based on an amendment moved by my noble friend Viscount Cameras in the other place, but withdrawn on receipt of reassurances from the Minister regarding it. This clause requires the government to publish a technical standard for machine-readable watermarks for the purpose of identifying licensed content when this is encountered by web crawlers and AI models. The development of such a standard will greatly enhance the ability of rights holders to protect their work and to support enforcement of creative rights by creating a record of where and how content has been used. The development of a technological standard will be incredibly useful, even if the government decides to take forward the flawed opt-out proposals, or say even if they're not ultimately adopted. This technical standard will be used in whatever situation we find ourselves in over the next few years in this industry. They will provide web crawlers and AI models with clear signposting that the content is not available for training or generative activity. Where properly deployed and observed by AI models, this will reduce the need for rights holders to take action to seek compensation for infringement of their copyright. The clause does not ask the government to commit to a specific solution, nor should it, but it requires the government to commit to identifying such a solution within a reasonable period. Let the industry sort it out. And that's certainly been one of the challenges that's been going in my mind throughout looking into and exploring this area, which is why hasn't, from a point of principle, the market fixed this in the first place, and we are where we are now in terms of trying to resolve these issues. This clause will promote transparency and certainty for both the creative and AI industries, and for these reasons I commend New Clause 20 to the committee and beg to move it.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. These discussions of AI and copyright, I've found a delightful exchange of I think, the creative industries that we love, and I've heard from across the House members of creative industries that we love. I understand the Minister's call to say that actually there are different spaces for that debate, and whether this is the place for that. But there are clauses that have been put through by the other House. I'd like to speak to those. In terms of, again, highlighting some of the creative industries that I love, this weekend I went to the Rex Cinema in Berkhamsted, one of the best cinemas in the world, I would like to say. So if any of you want to come, you're all very welcome. But sitting there watching, was it A Complete Unknown around Bob Dylan and the songs that he made in a cinema, which is very much a local, real movie theatre, reminded me just how important it is to ensure the creative industries are able to remain to maintain their creativity, because it's speaking to our soul, to our society. They are beyond the machine learning. They are humans who actually understand us, help tell our stories in different ways. And so that's why I have, or as Liberal Democrats, we've welcomed the clauses put forward from the other place, 135 to 139. We also welcome the consultation from the government, and pleased to hear there have been over 11,000 responses. You'll find in there are also responses from ourselves, because we wanted to make sure at every stage we wanted to put forward the representation of what we think, and also as Liberal Democrats. What has been disappointing, I think this is the message that's come across, is that because the government set out this change of having opt-in by default, that is what creative industries are calling out for, and saying actually if this was an open consultation, we need to make sure that those views are heard. So if those views are going to be heard, and indeed that balance of the creative industries working with innovation, as they have, as has been mentioned across the House, that's what we support. It's about getting that right. But I think we are proud of those industries here in the UK, and and working together and truly listening to those thousands of voices up and down this country is what we stand for, and we'll support the government moving forward in those. Thank you.
Mr Turner. Let me first of all commend both honourable members on their contributions to this. Look, I mean, let's face it, this is very difficult. And it's a classic case where of difficulty for the government because, as the previous government found, there are two sectors which are really important to UK growth. The creative industry is one of the fastest growing sectors in the UK and a representative of our future growth. Somebody put it to me the other day that there was a time when our economy relied on selling industrial products, and then it was services. And perhaps in the new era, one of the things that we are exceptionally good at is selling experiences. And a large part of that is through intellectual property from the creative industries. And so we know that we've identified the creative industries excuse me, as part of our industrial strategy, one of our key sectors. We definitely want to build on that. But at the same time, we're one of the biggest markets in the world for AI as well, and we have some of the best AI small startups and developers, and we want to build on that not only as a key part of our economic growth, but also as part of delivering productivity and efficiency within so much of our public services, and in industry and in so much of the way we live our life. And as the Honourable Member says, we don't believe that this is a zero-sum game. We do believe that it is possible to get to a situation where both the AI companies can flourish in the UK and the creative industries can do so at the same time. And indeed, to say anything other, I would argue, in the words of the Sugar Babes, would be a one-way ticket to a madman situation. There are a few points I want to make which I think are important here. First of all, in relation to the new Clause 20 and technical solutions, yes, we are very keen to get to a place where there are technical solutions. I said when I introduced the consultation in December that there are some very clever people out there who know how to do some extraordinary things with IT. There must be some very clever people who know how to ascertain the copyright of the material that they're using. And if you could get to a technical solution to rights reservation so that AI companies have the security of knowing that the material that they're using, that they're scraping or ingesting, and creative industries know that their work is being used and are able either to say, no, you can't use it, or if you are going to use it, you're going to remunerate me, whether that's individually or as part of a collecting society, then that would be a significant advance for us. And that's one of the key things that the Secretary of State has said repeatedly that we're trying to do. I'm not sure that the precise way in which the new Clause 20 suggests that we should bring forward a technological standard is the right way of doing it, but I'm very happy to have further conversations with him before we get to report stage. One of the things that's been significantly difficult, I think, for everybody is to make a proper economic impact assessment of what each version of these would look like. How do you assess the value of the future growth in AI in the UK against future growth of creative industries in the UK? Very difficult to judge, and one of the things I think that we need to address. It's also true that many creative industries use AI all the time, either as part of their business processes or else as actually part of the creative process. Whether it's editing a song so that it can use voices of people who are no longer with us, or it's CGI, or it's doing dubbing on films, a whole series of different places. And indeed, I was really struck when I went to Stratford last week to see Edward II, a magnificent production of Edward II at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, that they're talking there about creating a new video game which is based on Macbeth called Lily, and of course that's going to be using a lot of artificial intelligence. So, and a lot of tech companies are part of the creative industry. So I honestly don't think that these are two worlds that are completely apart. Of course, I give way to
Shadow Minister.
Thank you for giving way. I'm sort of tempted because I think we both clearly share a love for the Sugar Babes. And I was going to just draw reference to that. Of course, the creative industries also have quite a lot of experience when using other creative material licensed from other producers. So the Sugar Babes song, Freak Like Me, I'm fairly sure the sample is a direct take from Gary Newman's Our Friends Electric. and that, presumably they've come to some sort of arrangement in terms of organising that. So this sharing of data isn't something that's unusual for the creative sector.
Minister.
Well, I've often wondered whether Kylie's song Padam Padam is really a reference to Edith Piaf's Padam Padam Padam, because they're quite similar as well. And of course, this is a very well traversed space for people working in the copyright sphere, trying to make sure that either people are not passing off or they're not using other people's work without permission. And the economic and moral rights of rights holders are well established in UK law. This is legislation that some of it's been we started this process in 1709 under Queen Anne. Dickens, part of his ambition was always to make sure that people couldn't just take copies of his book to America and sell them for free without any payment to him, and so that's partly why we ended up with an international copyright regime. We simply don't want to undermine that. Now, on transparency is another key part of, obviously, one of the elements that we put into our consultation. Precisely how that works out, I think we need to be careful about. He referred to, as does his new clause 18, which he wants us to do something on in 3 months, which I would suggest, as ambitious as he may be for me, is remarkably short period of time in terms of parliamentary drafting. After all, this bill was first, a version of this bill was first introduced, I think, 4 years ago, and it still hasn't got royal assent. But he refers to the terms proportionate and effective. Well, to go back to Hamlet, there's the rub. Because what does proportionate mean? What does effective mean? How do you balance the two? That is going to be quite a difficult and competing set of agendas between different sectors, which we may in some shape or other have to arbitrate. He's right, Sue, to say that no one, I think anywhere in the world, has come to a proper and settled position on this. I mean, in the United States of America, for instance, a lot of AI companies have been relying on fair use, the traditional, slightly different copyright system in the United States of America. But of course, the most recent federal case found in favour of Reuters against the AI company, and said that it wasn't fair use to be scraping material. And the EU has not yet fully developed its set of proposals, and it hasn't decided quite how to implement its transparency requirements, and you could argue that that's one of the reasons why there hasn't been much additional licensing, which they always declared was going to be one of their declared goals. There's also the question of how do you enforce transparency. Now, one of the clauses that was inserted by the admirable Baroness Kidron was specific about enforcement and giving that power to the Information Commissioner. I'm not sure that that's the right place to put that. I'm not sure the Information Commissioner has the expertise or the resources to be able to do that, but it is undoubtedly, if you were going to have new transparency requirements, then you've undoubtedly got to have some form of enforcement. All of these things are pointing to me that putting this as an addendum to the data bill is not the right place to be doing this, and all of this should be seen in the round after a consultation, and should be a proper process of primary legislation, which may not happen for another 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, I don't know what. I am very keen, as is both Secretaries of State in Culture, Media and Sport and Science, Innovation and Technology, to get to a place where there is more licensing of copyrighted material by AI companies. I don't think anybody expects that the labour of others should be handed over to third parties without recompense or control, and that's why we would like to see further licensing. That itself is not simple. Because how do you balancing it might be simple, for instance, for DAX to do all the licensing for artists and photographers, but how do you do that for people who work as individuals rather than as part of a collecting society? Again, another set of issues that need to be addressed. The final point, Mr. Turner, that I'd make on this is that for my money, whilst I know there are places in the world where you can buy an AI-generated book, and it might be perfectly readable. We might all have authors that we think might have worked in that way in the past. But actually, I want to know that when I read a book or watch a film or listen to a piece of music, it's got a human involved in it. Human creativity is an absolutely vital part of what renders that process of creativity so important. And it's, I think of humans as fundamentally social beings. One of the worst things you can do to a human being is put them in solitary confinement, because that denies our fundamental social being. And what is so special about all of the creative industries is that they enable a connection from a human being to a human being. I'm absolutely passionate about not losing that, and not losing the value that is inherent in that as well.
Government Amendment 22 proposed to clause 95. The question is that the amendment be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 95 as amended stand part, which we've just debated. The question is that clause 95 as amended stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 96 stand part. The question is that clause 96 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 96 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 97 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clauses 98 to 101 stand part. The question is that clause 97 stand part of the bill. Minister.
Formally.
The question is that clause 97 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clauses 98 to 101 stand part, which we've just debated. With the leave of the committee, I will take the decision on these clauses together. The question is that clauses 98 to 101 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clauses 102 stand part. The question is that clause 102 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 102 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
On the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clauses 103 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 10. The question is that clause 103 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 103 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the questions on Schedule 10, which we've just debated. The question is that Schedule 10 be the 10th schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 104 stand part. The question is that clause 104 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 104 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 105 stand part. The question is that clause 105 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 105 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 106 stand part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clauses 107 and 108 stand part and Schedule 11. The question is that clause 106 stand part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 106 stand part of the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clauses 107 and 108 stand part, and the question on Schedule 11, all of which we've just debated. The leave of the committee, I'll take the decision on these clauses and schedule together. The question is that clauses 107 and 108 stand part of the bill, and that Schedule 11 be the 11th schedule to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 109 Stamp Part, with which it will be convenient to also consider clauses 110 and 113 Stamp Part. The question is that clause 109 Stamp Part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 109 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 110 Stamp Part, which we have just debated. The question is that clause 110 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 111 Stamp Part. The question is that clause 111 Stamp Part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 111 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 112 Stamp Part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 12. The question is that clause 112 Stamp Part of the bill.
Formally.
And the question is that clause 112 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 12, which we've just debated. The question is that Schedule 12 be the 12th schedule to the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 113 Stamp Part, which we have debated. The question is that clause 113 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 114 Stamp Part. The question is that clause 114 Stamp Part of the bill.
Formally.
And the question is that of a clause 114 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to clause 115 Stamp Part, with which it will be convenient to also consider Schedule 13 and clause 116 Stamp Part. The question is that clause 115 Stamp Part of the bill.
Formally.
The question is that clause 115 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Schedule 13, which we just debated. The question is that Schedule 13 be the 13th schedule to the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question that clause 116 Stamp Part, which we've just debated. The question is that 116, clause 116 Stamp Part of the bill, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move that the committee do now adjourn.
The question is that the debate now be adjourned, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
And of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Committee Room 11, sound. 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 Committee Room 11, sound.